to the Nape Mountain Lion Board meeting of Wednesday, August 19th, 2020. And could we have roll call, please, Rhonda?
Thanks, Madam Chair and members of the board. City of Flagstaff, Jim McCarthy.
I am here.
Thank you. Coconino County, Art Babbitt. He is planning to attend, so hopefully he'll be here shortly. City of Flagstaff, Jamie Whelan.
Present.
NAU, Deanna Coley.
Present.
Thank you. CCC, Steve Carew.
Present.
And we have Scott Holcomb, our legal counsel, on the line.
Good morning.
And we have, okay, that's all of our board members and legal counsel on the line. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move to our safety minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. This month's safety briefing is on wearing a mask in our hot Arizona climate. Wearing a mask in our hot Arizona weather can seem uncomfortable, even unbearable for some. But it is important to remember that this safety measure is critical in reducing the spread of the virus in our community. Here are a few tips to wear a mask safely and a little more comfortably in hot weather. First, try a mask made with cotton fabric instead of heavy material. Researchers have found that materials such as cotton and t-shirts are both breathable and they have a high droplet blocking capacity when developed with at least 2 layers. Nylon, polyester, and canvas, while great for particle filtration, rank poorly in breathability. If your mask becomes wet or damp, it's time to switch it out. Wearing a wet or damp mask lessens the ability of the mask to filter out bacteria, meaning it defeats the effectiveness of the mask. Cloth masks that become wet from sweat or exhaled moisture also lessen airflow of oxygen, making it harder to breathe. Always bring an extra mask to swap out in case yours becomes moist. Wash your mask often. Ideally, you should wash your mask after each use. Use regular laundry detergent and the warmest water possible for that type of material. Dry it on a high heat cycle. You can also hand wash your mask in a bleach solution. If you must be around others with a mask, take proper safety precautions for hot weather, such as staying hydrated, wearing loose-fitting clothing, and refraining from high-intensity activities. Welcome to the August board meeting, everyone.
Madam Chair, are you still there?
Yes, and I'd like to thank Wade for those safety minutes. Again, just taking a minute to welcome everyone back from our break. I'm sure Mountain Lion staff and leadership have gotten a lot done, and I can see that by the full agenda that we have. Very excited to move through this agenda and work hard so we can get to our executive sessions. So everyone, welcome and thank you for your hard work. We are on to agenda item number 4, approval of minutes, the regular meeting of 6/17/2020, and also the emergency meeting of 6/29/2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved. This is Supervisor Babbitt.
Well, hi, Art, thank you. Do I have a second?
This is Steve Bruce. I second the motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, signal aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. So that moves approval of the minutes. We're now looking at our consent items. Item 5 is consideration and approval of application and executive execution of contract. 6 is consideration of mobility on demand approval, application and execution of contract. Of course, directors, you know that we can take all of these together. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to
Madam
approve.
Chair, go ahead. I'll
Okay,
pass.
thank you Supervisor Babbitt. Do I have a second?
Second, Jim McCarthy to approve 5 and 6.
Is that a second? We have,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, thank you. Any discussion on consent items? Okay, then let's take a vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Excellent. Approval of the consent agenda. Now we're into our discussion and action items. Number 7 is to the consideration of AECom change order for Downtown Connection Center. And Kate, you're going to walk us through this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is the consideration of a change order for the Downtown Connection Center through the task order AECom has under the General Consulting Services contract. We originally signed a task order for the Downtown Connection Center with AECom when we had the $6.7 million grant through ADOT. Since that time, we received there's $15 million federal dollars for the construction of the Downtown Connection Center. And with that, the scope of the project has changed, and therefore we are looking to renegotiate that task order with AECom. A little bit of background about what's been done to date is AECom has done programming with staff on what the needs of the Downtown Connection Center are. You'll recall about a year and a half ago, they did a site alternatives analysis looking at all the potential opportunities in the downtown area. They have done title reports on the properties we are looking at, as well as appraisals to give us an understanding of the costs and the potential match value of property. They've done the utility mapping, quite a bit of NEPA research and background, some initial traffic analysis, particularly related to the ability to add a stoplight on Phoenix Avenue at Milton so that buses could have better ingress and egress out of the site. And they have developed a draft concept. And to go in a little bit into the programming that they identified early on in coordination with staff and that we've brought to the board as well, are a minimum of 15 bus bays to accommodate future routes, operator comfort station, including restrooms and a break room, a variety of patron amenities, parking, not only for staff, but potential kiss and ride where people can drop someone off at a bus after having shared part of their ride together, or allowing a ride share such as Uber or Lyft to wait there rather than roaming downtown blocks, and bike facilities. We also talked about a variety of partner options, including commercial space, regional transit services like Amtrak and Greyhound. So that was all part of the original scope. And then we've added a couple things since we got our increased funding for the Downtown Connection Center. We'd like to move those things we originally called desired into the needs category, and then additionally look at civic space, art, and admin facilities, which were not a part of the original programming of the downtown. Other additional scope beyond just the new programming is a heavier emphasis on public involvement, including the establishment of a community committee to be weighing in on the design process as we move through alternatives. To coordinate with an artist through the Beautification and Public Arts Commission, they have very graciously committed public art dollars to the project, since the Federal Transit Administration does not allow the use of money for public art, and so it would be coordinating with the BPAC and the artists selected by the BPAC. We've also established what we're calling an owners committee, where all those partner uses would come together to weigh in on the process as we go along. So not only mountain line staff, but if city were to consider offices there, the civic space would be maintained by Parks and Rec, so having them have a seat at the table, potentially Amtrak, Greyhound, all the people we would, consider owners of the project. We're also looking at an expanded NEPA process, because when we first signed this, we didn't know what property we were going to be on. The Rio de Flag for this parcel does add a little bit of complication over what was initially anticipated in the NEPA. So we're not anticipating anything that is a deal breaker, just more analysis than originally expected. FTA joint development expert is now included on the team to help us make sure that as we look to partnerships, we comply with all the rules of FTA. And the final one is the final design of temporary facilities. So we have to demolish our current site and operate out of temporary facilities before we are able to build this final site, and that will all require approved plan sets. And so AECOM will do a final design of all those temporary facilities for us as well. So that's all included in the plus up of about $800,000 to the task order. We just want to acknowledge how are we going to deliver the rest of the project. So this is for the 30% design, which gets us essentially through all the permit approvals with the City of Flagstaff, through the planning and zoning permitting approvals with the City of Flagstaff, not construction documents, as well as approvals from FTA. And we're still exploring how we're going to deliver the rest of the project. There are a variety of options, including design bid build, CMAR, or design build options. AECOM's actually spoke to help us in the consideration of what would make sense for delivering the project. We expect to make that decision late this fall or early winter, so that way we can begin any procurements that are needed to do the final design and construction. The goal for timeline is that concept will be done in spring of 2020. Final design would occur over spring of 2021, not 2020. Final design would then begin and continue for the rest of 2021. Construction would then occur right after the Rio de Flag, which is slated for a 2021-2022 construction season. So the DCC would be looking at a 2022-2023, so immediately following that. The total cost for this change order brings the total cost for the 30% design to $1.5 million. Again, that's about an $800,000 increase in this task order. And again, we would be paying for that out of two FTA grants, one for $6.7 million and another for $15.6 million federal. And the other thing I would say related to the delivery of the project is we're also considering the possibility of bringing on an owner's rep to help us with the delivery of the project. An owner's rep could bring value from everything about negotiating agreements to working with bringing on the CMAR design bid build team to helping with the actual construction and making sure we're getting the best value of the steel and the concrete and all the things we will be purchasing. And so we'll bring a consideration back for the board for an owner's rep at an upcoming meeting as well. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, directors, are there any questions? Comments?
Madam Chair, this is Steve Peru. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
If you could go to the slide where you showed what was not originally in the scope, but is being added. That one. Can you speak to number 3, admin facilities? I just want to get some clarification on where it was originally and where is it now?
Yeah, so originally we had talked about a focus on customer service, so like a front desk where people could get lost and found and buy passes. Now that we have additional funding, we believe there's some value in moving some of the admin team that we have here at the CAFR headquarters downtown, partly because we're often coordinating with partners who are located downtown. There's quite a bit of travel time back and forth for meetings when we do them in person. but also just to be in that hub of downtown. The other thing that allows us is this Caspar facility is pretty maxed out in terms of space for storing buses.
Mhm.
And so by planning for the capacity for admin to move downtown, it opens up the possibility of remodeling or redoing this Caspar facility to allow for expanded bus storage. And we are kicking off a Caspar master plan in the next couple of months that we did receive a grant for as well, for somebody to look at all those alternatives about what could happen here, with the consideration of moving some staff downtown as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, comments?
This is Steve again. One other question, if
Yes,
there aren't
Steve.
any others before me.
Mhm.
So with regard to the public outreach component of this, I know we've spoken about it, but if you can remind us again, the touch points, the milestones, not in a lot of detail, but just generally speaking, how the public notification and
Yeah.
awareness is going to work. Thank you.
Yeah, so originally we had very much planned to do outreach with riders as well as some surveys, general surveys, and an open house or two for the project. We're really looking at plussing that up, I think, in the biggest way by adding this committee now of community members that aren't the owners, that aren't Mountain Line, that are representatives of the Southside Group, Plaza Vieja, potentially the Chamber or DBA, some transit riders, really just community members who are interested in the project. They would meet approximately 6 times over the next 8 to 9 months with the architect specifically to be providing guidance, continuing guidance on what the architect and design team are coming up with, including specifically really thinking about any civic space components. The city has indicated they'd be willing to maintain civic space in the downtown, hardscape civic space in the downtown, but don't have a vision for what that need is. And so this group would really be able to hone in on what that would look like in addition to other design factors of the building. We really like this approach and that there's a committee that's coming along with the design process. And then we would be asking them to reach out to their groups as well and be seeking input. And that would be in addition to all these things we originally had planned, such as surveys. We might have to get creative about how to host an open house, but I could see us having events down at the DCC, trying to get input from riders, figuring it all out with social distancing, but I think there's lots of opportunity.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kate. That was a great presentation. I would like to let you know that I certainly do support those community committees and the owners committee. I think it's important to remember that not only west side of town will be affected, but I'd like to see those individuals on the east side of town who ride and will be using the Downtown Connection Center. So with that said, I think bringing on an owner's rep, since we're not in the building business, would be another good way to support this project. So I just want to thank you very much for your update, and we've got some exciting things coming forward. So
Thank you, Madam.
with that,
There is an action, not just an update.
yes, I got it. With that said, staff recommends that Board of Directors approve a change of order to the DCC task order with AECom in the amount of $799,931. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve. Jim McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Do I have a second?
Second, Dan O'Cooley.
Thank you, Director Coley. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that moves forward. Thank you very much, directors. We are now on item 8, consideration. Consider the disadvantaged business enterprise DBE goal for federal fiscal year 2021, 2023. Heather, I'd like to welcome you to our board meeting, and we're excited about your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Whelan and members of the board. I'm Heather Higgins. I'm the Purchasing and Contracts Officer and Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Liaison Officer. Heather, slide 2, please. Or I'm sorry, one more. There we go. Before you, you have a staff report regarding Mountain Line's updated Disadvantaged Business Enterprise goal. As a federally funded entity, Mountain Line is required to maintain a DBE program and set DBE goals as part of our civil rights program. The goal and methodology establishes Mountain Line's estimated overall goal for FTA-assisted contracts that Mountain Line anticipates awarding in the federal fiscal years 2021, 2022, and 2023. The purpose of the DBE goal setting process is to ensure that non-discrimination in the award of U.S. Department of Transportation assisted contracts, to create a level playing field on which DBEs can compete fairly for those contracts, and to ensure the DBE program is narrowly tailored in accordance with applicable laws. We took the following steps in order to evaluate our past DBE goal and reach our new proposed goal for federal fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. Next slide, please. Based on Mountain Line's 10-year plan and anticipated Department of Transportation assisted projects, we determined the weight of those projects by North American Industry Classification System, NAICS codes. This gave us the value of the project's percentage of total DOT awarded funds. Next slide. Next, we determined the number of vendors available for these projects by NAICS code, calculating both total number of vendors as well as total number of DBE vendors. And that gave us the percentage of DBE vendors within the available groups. Next slide. Next, we calculated the weight from step 1 multiplied by the percentage of available vendors, giving us the rounded weighted base figure of 6%. Next slide. Finally, we calculated our DBE participation over the previous triennial period, which was 4.8%. We use this figure to weigh the weighted base figure, arriving at the updated proposed DBE goal of 3% for federal fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. Next slide. A public comment period was held ending August 15th, 2020. To date, there have been no comments. The proposed triennial goal was submitted to FDA for review on August 1st and is pending FDA comments. And our recommendation is that the Mountain Line Board of Directors adopt this proposed DBE goal of 3% for federal fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. Are there any questions?
Directors, any questions for Heather? Seeing
Just,
no questions.
sorry,
Oh.
sorry,
Yes,
the question, it's, systematic how you arrive at the number. Is this based on anything template from the federal government or just something you developed yourself?
It's based on FTA guidance, yes.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. And Heather, is there any concern from the drop? We were at 9% to 3%. I see you recalculated everything and it's a solid 3%. But does that kind of offset concern you at all?
No, my understanding of the FDA rules is that we need to just come to a number that is, for us at this time, something that's achievable. And the 9% looking backwards was not achievable. And so we're just trying to move forward with something that's more accurate to our needs.
Well, that certainly makes sense. Thank you very much. So directors, with no more comments or questions, we're looking for a motion to approve the new percentage rate.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
I have another question.
okay.
So when did this program go into effect? How long have you been running the DBE program?
That I do not know off of the top of my head.
Is it possible that, do you have any information on, say, the last 5 years and where you see that participation and the trend? You know, stagnant, upwards, downwards, you know, what's the 5-year trend?
Do you mean in terms of participation? Sorry, you mean the downward trend in terms of our participation?
Dr. Okoli?
Sorry, you said you had a percentage of 9% that was unrealistic. The participation has been what? I'm just trying to see the trend in all of these years. What's it's been relative to the 9% where it was?
Yes, so over the last triennial period, our total participation was 4.08%.
Okay, that's the, when you say the, so that's the average?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
This is Scott Holcomb. Just want to correct it, if I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Scott.
That's
Yes.
not the average. That looks to be the total over the last the 3
that's
years,
correct.
not the average. The average is less than 2%, much less than 2%.
Okay,
Madam Chair, members of the board,
Yes.
if I could, can I interrupt a bit?
yes.
So, Director Okoli, if I could, I used to run the DBE program before we hired Heather's position several years ago. We've had this program in place for over 10 years. It was triggered by the amount of federal funding that we received and that requirement that we have a DBE program. That DBE program is federally approved. And then every 3 years, we have to update our goal setting. The one thing I would add is that our goal setting fluctuates because it is based on the type of contracts that we have and the availability of DBE vendors within each of those type of contracts. So for example, in 2019, you can see we had $1 million in our first half of the year in contracts, which resulted in 2%. And then when we drop those contract values down, we see less participation. One of the things that we see is that most of the DBEs reside in the large metropolitan areas, and they don't want to come to our small urban area to fulfill small contracts. So to really attract DBEs, we need to have large contract values. And so our participation does fluctuate based on the type of capital projects that we have in each of these triennial periods.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Heather. I would not call that a disruption. I would certainly call that added information. So thank you very much. Any other conversation before we go to the motion? Okay, thank you. And directors, we're looking for a motion to adopt 2021-2023 DBE goal setting methodology and approve the updated DBE goal of 3%.
Madam Chair, this is Steve Pearl. I'll make the motion. with the language that you just provided.
Thank you, Director Peru. And do I have a second?
Second, Supervisor Babbitt.
Thank you, Supervisor Babbitt. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We're moving on to, great job, Heather. Thank you for your presentation. We're moving on to agenda item number 9, consideration of 2021 liability insurance options. Heather, would you take it away?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. So I am here today following up on the June 29th discussion about liability insurance options. If you'll recall at that meeting, we did have approval to join a transit risk pool that allowed us to get $20 million in insurance. That's our total liability coverage. Since that date, we've continued, as directed by the board, to pursue additional lines of coverage and have encountered ongoing challenges. So what I'm seeking today is that we actually amend the master IGA to allow us to secure $21 million in liability insurance, which is what we currently have. And it is actually reflective of our loss history, and then delegate to my position, the CEO and general manager, and our legal counsel to finalize that amendment language to execute signatures, as this has not been yet provided to our partners for review. So to give you some background on where we're at, this is the actual language of our existing master IGA. And if you will note, this is the language in our master IGA. It does require the $30 million across all lines of coverage, and it does require us to pursue AA rated or better insurance policies. Where we are with our insurance program is the $21 million. $6 million is inclusive of our $1 million per occurrence policy, as well as our $5 million umbrella, and that is provided under our agreement with Travelers Insurance. Additionally, we have the $5 million of excess that we gained from joining Transit Re, which is that risk pool that was considered in June. And I just want to clarify that that layer does not extend over workers' compensation or employers' liability. And I'm going to talk about why that's important in a moment. And then additionally, we did gain $10 million of excess coverage from Great American, who has been providing that $10 million excess coverage in prior years as well. And again, because of the disruption in the middle, because Transit Re doesn't extend over workers' comp or employers' liability, neither does Great American. It's considered a break in coverage, and so therefore Great American doesn't cover those lines either. So again, if we go back to the restated master IGA, I would call your attention to the fact that we include all lines of coverage in our requirement for $30 million, and we require the AA rating. The problem with that is that we've been unsuccessful in obtaining $30 million. We cannot get $30 million on employers' liability coverage. We need to be able to name our partners. We need to remove the requirement to name our partners on management liability and employment practices. It's not something the insurance industry offers. We are missing language about primary and non-contributory coverage for our partners, and also the need to have a waiver of subrogation as related to workers' compensation. And that AA rating coverage is a problem when we join a pool, because pools don't have traditional ratings like insurance companies. So in talking with the city risk manager, Dean, and the county risk manager, Margaret Panato, we came up with an amendment that would modify the requirement from $30 million to $21 million. We spent some time talking about the reasonableness of this change, and I just want to say we did also review our loss history. Maple's has only ever had one large loss. It was in 2012. It was settled for $750,000. So that loss stayed within our primary line of coverage, and we have had 0 losses go into our excess coverage limit. Our average claims per year are roughly about 25,000 in total. Most of our claims are small or nuisance claims, and we pay them out of pocket. They don't even go as high as our deductible per occurrence. Our deductible per occurrence is currently $25,000. The other changes in the First Amendment would be correcting which policies partners would be named on. Again, that's important because we cannot name them on some of those lines of coverage. It corrects the primary non-contributory language. Just want to point out that we can only do that on general and auto liability, and both of the risk managers I spoke with, that was reasonable. It corrects the language for the waiver of subrogation, which we do provide, but now it adds it as part of the requirement. And then it does modify that requirement for AA ratings to allow, one, A-rated firms, but also alternatives for doing financial analysis of those pools when we want to join them. So with that, that's my presentation in regards to why we're seeking an amendment to the restated master IGA. And with approval, we would then reach out to each of those partners to begin this discussion. I'm available.
Thank you, Heather. Sure do appreciate the work with our partners in coming to this conclusion. Directors, do you have any comments or questions?
Madam Chair, Jim McCarthy.
Yes, Mr. McCarthy.
So if I understand this correctly, the decision on the table today is authorize our management or staff to go out and negotiate with the other IGA members. And then once everyone's in actual agreement, then we would formally change the IGA at that point. Is that correct?
No, my understanding. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Heather.
No, I apologize. I am asking that the board authorize that change today with the language as finalized and approved by the partners and NAICS legal counsel.
So we'd be approving it now, and then it would be subject to IGA approval from the other entities.
Yes, sir.
Yes. My other thought is that my wife had a brain injury, so I have some experience with workman's compensation issues. And $1 million is not enough. I think that should be at least double that. Thoughts?
So we provide for the statutory requirement for workers' compensation.
Which is 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Directors, any thoughts or comments to Councilmember McCarthy's thoughts?
Let me just be specific. My wife's injury was significant enough that she can't work anymore. She can't drive a car, but she's basically functional. And it was like, what, 13 years ago. And I'm sure the expenses are probably about 1.3 million so far. So I anticipate that, you know, in her lifetime, it'll probably be at least 2 million. But so what does this mean? If a person is injured, the first $1 million is paid, and after that, it's just tough luck, right?
Director McCarthy, if I can clarify, I don't believe, I'm looking at page 2 of the staff report, and workers' compensation is not included in the 1 million per occurrence limitation. I think the statutory requirements don't have such a limit. What we have is a limit on our employment practices liability and our employer's liability. Those are different than our workers' comp liability. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
So in the instance of your wife's claim, we would not be limited to $1 million claim for her. We would follow the statutory requirements that if we're liable, then we would settle or pay that claim.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other considerations, questions, directors?
This is Steve Peru, if I could ask a question, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Director Peru.
So we're going down from 30 million to 21 million, based on just availability of coverage. Obviously, we hope we would never have anything of that magnitude. And so I guess what I'm getting at is that, based on we've searched, we've looked at all the options, and 21 million is what we can secure. Would we though be able to look at, this would be an ongoing, awareness on our part. So would we continue to look at potential additional coverages throughout the year? Because the market changes so much. I just need to know if 21 is where we're going to go and be good with that.
Thank you, Director Peru, for the question. I think what we're suggesting is that 21 million would be our bottom limit requirement per our restated IGA. We would continue to explore all options to improve our coverage when the market changes again. And we are really thinking that the market and where it stands today is probably a 2 to 5 year stance in the insurance market. But yes, we will continue to explore other options, and some of the language changes that we're suggesting would allow us to pursue other pools of insurance, which could maximize our coverage further.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I also think that the priority would be to revise this IGA while we're still looking. We're certainly not the only agency. We've seen it in the county, we've seen it in the city. We're looking to change this IGA as quickly as possible. So do I have any other discussion? Do I have a motion to authorize our CEO and general manager to engage Mountain Lions Partners to revise the master IGA regarding section 16 insurance as a result of changing the liability insurance market to reflect mountain lion loss history, and to delegate authority to the CEO and general manager and Mountain Lion legal counsel to finalize the language for executing signatures?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Director Peru.
I will go ahead and make the motion with the language you just stated, please.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second, Supervisor Babbitt.
Thank you, Director Babbitt. Any
Additional discussion.
other discussion?
Yes, Jim McCarthy.
Yes, Councilmember McCarthy.
The motion is to finalize the language. So in effect, we're saying that the language can change and this will not come back. We're giving authority to the CEO, general manager, in consultation with the council, legal counsel, to finalize and authorize the final language, which will be similar, but could be different than what we've seen. Is that correct? I guess what's going through my mind is if the language isn't final, it might be appropriate for this to come back to the board once the language is final.
Well, I think it's, in my opinion, I think it's important to know that this language has already been viewed by stakeholders. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, this was a stakeholder effort, correct?
Madam Chair and Director McCarthy, that's correct. The language in the First Amendment was drafted and reviewed by city risk as well as the city attorney and county risk as well as the county attorney. This language in the First Amendment has not been provided to CCC or NAU. And I would just say that what I was trying to capture in the recommendation was to allow us to make non-significant changes to the language. We would not change any of the limits that are required or the types of coverage required. It's just to finesse that language if one of the other partners came back and requested a change that was did not change the intent.
So what
Thank you.
you're verbally saying is that it might be clerical errors or minor errors, but nothing of substance.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, this is Scott Holcomb.
Yes,
If I
Scott.
may, and I deal with this in other areas as well. And as the legal counsel for Mountain Line, I would not approve anything that went beyond or made a substantive change to the parameters that you were giving this authorization. This authorization is for us to finalize the document, but subject to the parameters that you have been provided with and are the basis for this approval. Heather, I think that's your understanding as well.
So
Yes.
that answers Director McCarthy's concern.
Well, and I guess I'll say that with that assurance, and that's now on the record, I will support this measure.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion from Director Peru. Did I have a second? Yes, from Supervisor Babbitt. We had our discussion. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so that moves forward. Thank you, everyone. You're doing great. Now we're on to agenda item number 10. Kate, you're going to talk to us about the Yavapai Metropolitan Planning Organization request for service.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. There's no action with this item. It's just giving the board an opportunity to weigh in as we discuss options with CIMPO, the Central Yavapai Metropolitan Planning Organization, regarding their request for service. They are still working through their board process to seek approval. We would anticipate that if there's support from the board, a potential action item would come back in October. The request from CIMPO is for assistance to help them access their CARES Act funds. So CARES Act, as a reminder, is the package of stimulus money that went out, I believe, in March or April at this point in time. Through that process, that's where Mountain Line received the $7 million in funds. CIMPO was allocated $3.5 million by population through that act. However, to access the funds requires Section 5307 recipient status, which CIMPO does not have because they do not run a transit service at this time. Their request is for Mountain Line to assist them in helping to draw down $400,000 of their $3.5 million award for transit planning. And for doing that, Mountain Line would receive 10% for administering the funds on their behalf. As a reminder, the CARES Act funds are 100% funding and require no local match. Mountain Line adopted a policy by which to consider such requests several years ago, and so I'll walk through those considerations right now. The first one is that the direct costs are paid by the requesting agency. All the costs for transit planning, anticipated at $365,000, would be paid for through the drawdown of CARES funds, so essentially by CIMPO's money and no reliance on Mountain Line for that. It also states that the indirect costs need to be paid by the requesting agency, and they are proposing to pay us 10% or about $36,000 to administer the funds on their behalf. We do believe that that is adequate to cover all of our costs associated with doing that. The service request also must be consistent with our mission, vision, and values. I've outlined a couple on the slide in front of you and in your report that we believe that the request is consistent with. And then finally, for a minimum requirement is that NAPA can continue to meet all of our own commitments to our partners. And then we do believe that we can accommodate the drawdown of these funds while still maintaining our commitment to the current strategic plan and items the board has directed us to pursue. In addition to the minimum requirements, the policy asks that we consider a few additional thoughts. First, does the requesting agency have a long-term commitment to funding? The answer to this is no. SIMPO does not have long-term funding commitment to transit. However, these are 100% funds, so they don't need local match for them. Additionally, all they're doing at this time is planning. They're not implementing a service. And so there is no long-term service dependency that would be created by starting something up and then not having the funds to commit to it. And that's really the purpose of that commitment, is to not put out service we can't sustain. That gets to the second item in front of you as well. And then finally, the policy asks, are there any indirect benefits to NAFTA member agencies if we honor the request? We just recognize that we've talked about regional transit service for quite some time, and that what is happening through this planning process is a step-by-step implementation plan for SIMPO. The goal of the implementation plan is to get them to become their own 5307 recipients, so they would not have to ask Mountain Line. They would then potentially be able to draw down the rest of their funding commitment on their own without our help. And so that's their thought process and how they want to move forward. I just want to point out, we did help with a similar request for SIMPO about 18 months ago to do their TRIP, their transit implementation plan. That is wrapping up and should be done shortly. This funding would then give them, again, that step-by-step guideline to actually making it happen from the legal perspectives and assistance of getting the Section 5307 status. Again, there's no action at this time, and we would be looking to return in October if there's support from the board for moving forward with considering the request. And with that, I am happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kate. Directors, any questions or comments? Seeing none. Boy, I sure hope this works out, Kate, because they certainly would benefit should their council approve moving forward with transit. So thank you very much for the presentation. Anything else from you, Kate?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Directors, I would like to poll, as we are still in the discussion and in action, I would like to poll number 17, the COVID-19 reopening plan. We'll be asked to adopt that and in September. So is there any need for discussion on that? Kate?
Madam Chair, I'm happy to give a quick overview. I apologize for not agendizing this as an action item today, so we're not able to take any action. I'd be happy to talk through what's in the plan and take direction from the board if there is any.
Okay, so that's what we'll do for that, is move that, if you don't mind. Is everybody agreeable to that?
That's fine.
Fine with me.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Kate, do you want to give us that overview?
Great, sounds good. So
Okay.
Mountain Light has been working on our COVID-19 reopening plans for several months, really since March, and has more formal plans that we would like the board to consider next month. It is a 4-phase plan. We used quite a few inputs in getting to the place where we are, including looking at what all of our partner agencies are doing for reopening. We have worked extensively with staff. We did an employee survey to see how operators felt about different phases of the plan. And finally, once we had a draft, we did take it to Coconino County Public Health Services for their review of the document and input, and have incorporated all of their comments as well. Generally, for the 4 phases, phase 1 is what we've really moved into phase 2, but current conditions are that we have heightened cleaning on buses and here at headquarters. The main office is closed. We're not collecting fares and doing rear door boarding. Face coverings are required. Staff have to do a variety of health screenings to enter the building. And generally, it's the most restrictive phase of the document. We did enter phase 2 on August 9th, and that was specifically about increasing service in coordination with NAU students returning. The thought process there was that with NAU students returning, there would be additional demand for the buses, and we wanted to put more service back out so we could accommodate social distancing to the best degree possible. Again, as a reminder, we ran weekend service 7 days a week all summer long. So far, increasing back to normal service levels is going really well. We immediately had a 40% increase in ridership when we did that. However, the passenger loads on the buses have remained about the same as they have all summer because there are more buses out there to put all those people on. So we feel like that has gone really well so far. The next phase that we would enter is related to declining cases in the region. We're tying this to the City of Flagstaff phase 3, which is based on a variety of trigger points for, capacity at the hospital, number of tests were available to administer, how well people are complying with CDC recommendations, and then how many cases we're having as well. Once we enter phase 3, based on the city entering its phase 3, we would then look to reinstitute fare collection. We have a variety of protocols that are implemented along with that regarding handling money. And we would also need to open up the lobby at that time. So I really think that's one of the big changes we would see is that Mountain Line's headquarters would be reopened. We've got protocol in place for that as well about markings on floors for people standing apart. We already have plexiglass in place, might not be plexiglass, but something similar, to protect staff, et cetera. So that's the big change in phase 3 is the fare collection and then everything that needs to occur to resume fare collection. And then finally, phase 4, also in line with the city's phase 4, is really what we're calling the end of the pandemic, and it's coordinated with the mayor's declaration of that. And at that time, we would resume really just more normal operations. But we anticipate that enhanced cleaning protocol, some staff that we have associated with that will always remain. We've just implemented some better practices so not everything would go away. But that is the high level of the plan. I'm happy to take any feedback and incorporate it, and then I can bring it back for action next month.
Directors, any
Madam Chair?
comments? Yes,
Jim McCarthy.
yes, Director McCarthy.
I would just like to let everybody know that by a split vote, 5-2, last night, that the City Council, Flagstaff, voted to move to phase 3.
I was watching the meeting before this meeting, and I have not made it to the vote portion yet. That was really good news. So we have a couple, so that would get us to start looking at moving to fare collection. We have a couple of things that we need to implement, so it won't happen immediately. But for example, we need some driver barriers up so that they have, essentially a sneeze guard protection, and then we'll work on getting the fare or the money cash handling protocol going. And so we would be moving forward to opening the office as well. We could also delay that until the board takes action on this next month if that's preferred.
Directors?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Supervisor Babbitt.
So can you, Councilmember McCarthy, can you help me in practical terms understand what that decision last night, what is the outputs of that decision? And then Kate, when you say that will affect going to fare collection, tell me a little bit about the process, timing of that. So Jim, would you mind starting, or Jamie starting with, what's the practical output of that decision?
Well, we do have a document that outlines it in detail, and I don't remember all the details, but
Just in general, yeah.
and Jamie, correct me if I'm not wrong on any of this. I think it'll allow for sports, soccer teams on city property and things. Most of the rules are really dictated by the governor, and the only thing that the city can really do is control its own property. Like the library. Of course, the library shared with the county, but City Hall, the Aquaplex, and things like that. I don't think the Aquaplex is going to open. So, Jamie, can you give any more detail than that?
Sure. So Art, it was a great discussion last night, a lot of considerations. We were looking at our own criteria that we set before the large spike that we had in the county, in the city. And so there were some concerns that did we take that into consideration, how quickly that could happen. What it looks like is the outdoor facilities, the fields will begin to open and begin to be more organized. So teams who have their own protocol in place will be able to use those fields. Of course, you're probably aware that the governor's office came out with a new dashboard, and that regulated the opening of gyms and inside facilities. Right. And according to that, there are 3 criteria. We have hit 2 of those criteria, meaning that we are in a moderate level. And because one of the reasons of lack of data, their data goes to July, the mid-July, we're already mid-August. So we're thinking we will have the final criteria, we'll meet that, and then we can be looking at our site plans to open up those facilities.
Gotcha.
Again, every council member said, please proceed with caution, that employee safety must come first. And that's what I'd like to bring into this conversation, but continue on. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. And I really wanted to understand if that decision last night is driving us through what Kate's perspective is going to, resumption of cash deal. I mean, because I heard that, but I wanted to be clear about that. So, Kate?
Well,
Thank you.
and
I'll start and then, go ahead.
I'd just like to add, I'm sure we're all aware of this. We take one timid step forward and we're always fluid and flexible to change those things.
Well,
so,
yeah. And Jamie, as we talked about on Stronger as One, we're in a great place right now, but we're just entering the 2 to 3 week lag of when NAU's numbers are going to start reflecting out in our daily data. And based on the beer pong party I witnessed on Grand Canyon the other night, with no masks and 40 people, I'm anticipating repercussions. What a shock. Taking responsibility for our actions is going to be coming here to some degree. I think the question is what level of degree.
I totally agree with you. And so that ability to be nimble is, and slowly moving forward, because, as it was said last night, we might have to do a about turn in 2 weeks. So with that said, Kate, would you continue?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, Supervisor Babbitt. So in thinking about this, the reality of all the things that we would need to accomplish in order to collect fare are unlikely to be able to occur before our September meeting anyways. We need to get the plexiglass installed on all the buses. We've been doing prototypes, but we're resolving some glare and scratch issues before we get those out on the street. And then additionally, we talked about the resuming cash handling also means we need to institute some of our services regarding the pickup, our secured pickup of cash, and working with those partners as well. So I think even though the city has chosen to move to this phase, that we really couldn't take action on FAIR before the September board meeting when the board had a chance to officially adopt this plan anyways. And so that buys us a little time to see what happens related to NAU data, but we can start moving in that direction so we're prepared at any moment to implement. And I want to offer an opportunity for Heather, since this is breaking news as well, for her to chime in.
Yeah, so I just want to point you to the second page of Kate's staff report where she summarizes phase 3, and really the city entering their phase 3 triggers our considerations, and we begin to reinstitute. So those are important words. It's not that, oh, they went there, we have to. It's that we come up with a plan that's appropriate, and I appreciate Director Babbitt's caution. Our drivers are in a different position sometimes for exposure than maybe someone sitting in an office. So I also will just share and point you towards another progress report that we'll get to, which is the current event. And bullet 3 of that talks about the driver partition, where we're at with that. And we're really expecting to have that in place by October 1, which again, I think supports our plan that we would take at least 2 weeks to get FAIR messaging out to passengers about the reinstatement of FAIR and FAIR collection. And so the city entering phase 3 just triggers us to start those conversations and still keeps us in line with where we think we'll be with those driver petitions, which we think are extremely important for reinstating FAIR collection.
Thank you, Heather. And can you tell me where we're at with the e-passes? This certainly would be a wonderful opportunity to look at that option.
Yes, ma'am. So our FAIR system is ready to go with 2 of the 3 improvements that we really want to implement that help us go cashless. One is the online reloading of the cards and a stored value card. That both of those would allow for folks to have less cash. The stored value card would allow someone to load $5 at a time on that card and use it on an as-needed basis, deducting either one-way tickets or day pass tickets. Again, just eliminating cash, especially for those where $37 for a monthly pass is not always possible. And then the third and final step of that, Chair Whelan, is the mobile ticketing solution, which I think you're speaking to. And we are still very early in the phases of evaluating what that full solution looks like. We're being very thoughtful and intentional. We could certainly go buy a mobile ticketing solution, but we want to make sure that it correctly can be combined with real-time arrival and trip planning solutions as well.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sure I'm speaking for the board. Mountain Line employee safety is certainly a priority in everything that we do. And clearly you have taken very good care of employees, but we have a whole nother chapter we're looking at. So let's not let our guards down. Okay, anything else, directors? Okay, we'll jump back to move out of discussion and action into progress report. Heather, you're up. Strategic.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The progress reports are provided for your review and consideration. If at any time we have delivered information in a progress report that you would like us to put on a future agenda, we would be happy to do that. We're trying to use this reporting format to provide updates and information that then allows us to engage where appropriate at board meetings. So with that, I don't have any additional comments on the progress report. I would draw your attention to the current events because there's some good stuff in there. And then I have a couple of announcements, Jamie. I don't know if they fit here or somewhere else on the agenda.
Sure, why don't we go with your announcements?
All right, so briefly, I will be quick. Wanted to let you know that unfortunately Wade Forrest, who is our facilities manager, has resigned from his position, and his last day will be Friday, September 4th. He has decided to try other adventures in life. I'm sure you're all aware Wade's been with us for a long time. He's actually been here 14 years, and he started out as a bus operator. He has been a key member of our facilities team as well as our leadership teams here, and we're going to miss him. But of course, we wish him the best of luck. I don't know that if he's listening or here. I was hoping he would be here because I really wanted to recognize everything he has done for us. So if you do see Wade out and about in the community, wanted you to know that we wish him the best of luck.
Wade, are you here with us?
He's not here with
Okay,
us.
all right.
A couple other items. We will be sending out an email to all board members. As a reminder, the rules of procedure that were adopted last spring require us to modify a little bit how we have designees and alternates set up. And we will be asking board members as well as Transit Advisory Committee members to look at designees and alternates and make some decisions and get those back to us as soon as possible, because September will include training for all members of both of those groups on our code of conduct and social media policies. And we'd like to be sure that the appropriate designees and alternates are also invited to that session.
Okay.
And in the current events, near the bottom.
Yes.
Madam Chair, this is Scott Holcomb.
Yes,
Related to that, we're going to be doing the training, and we invited at the TAC meeting and here as well. If there are any issues or particular things you want to make sure we cover, we're hopefully going to cover everything that relevant. But if you have particular concerns, issues with that, please communicate that to Heather or Rhonda, and so that we can make sure that's included in the training.
Okay, thank you very much.
And last two quick updates. In the current events, there is mention of the Downtown Business Alliance and their Downtown Vision Plan. We did receive word just late last night or early this morning of a couple of events that the board may want to participate in. I've listed a couple of them, and we will send additional information by email. And then lastly, I'm happy to report Mountain Line has been invited to participate in an interview with CNN on the impact of COVID on our funding and the ongoing need for federal support. That invitation to participate came out of our participation in a national press conference with the American Public Transit Association. So wanted to let you know, as soon as we have details on when that will be aired, we will also share that information.
And that's thank you, Heather. That's so exciting. Would you mind sharing with the board your presentation that you did?
I will be happy to share. It was about a 3-minute share of talking points on staff, cleaning, staffing, and funding. But yes, I will be happy to share that.
Excellent. Thank you. So CNN, here we come. All right. So I believe that I will consider a motion to convene into an executive session.
Madam Chair, this is Steve Pruitt. I'll make the motion.
Thank you so much, Steve. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second, Director Babbitt.
Thank you, Director Babbitt. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, excellent. So, Scott, do I need to close the regular agenda down and go into executive session, or can we just move right into it?
Madam Chair, that's a question I had. I did not have separate Zoom directions to go into the executive session. We're going to use the
Okay.
same Zoom for the
Okay.
executive session. I do believe. Is that correct, Heather?
And asking, John, our IT folks, if he will clarify.
That's correct. We're gonna, we'll start up a breakout room and move everybody into that. And then, the non-essential staff will leave the room here physically.
Hey, Madam Chair, can I bring up something before we go into E-session?
Yes,
There was some talk just a moment ago about some training. And it
Yes.
occurs to me that if we're going to be training a bunch of people towards the end of this year, it might be unproductive because probably in December, we will have changes on the executive committee after the election. So maybe there may be reasons that you can't do it this way, but you might consider doing the training in January.
well, we've been in conversation about that, Director McCarthy. And as it stands right now, we do have alternates for each of our positions. And so those would be the individuals that would be in the training. Is that correct, Heather?
Madam Chair and Dr. McCarthy, we're actually proposing it would be all current seats as well as designees or alternates. And we feel like the timing is still relevant for the members that are serving in the upcoming months. And we do understand that we have a change coming in January and may need to repeat some of that one-on-one. But we feel like for the groups in total, that this is still an appropriate and good time for them.
All right, I'll trust your judgment on that. I'm glad you thought about it. Thank you.
Everyone, if you wouldn't mind, as we make this transition, could we please take perhaps a 5-minute break and meet up again in at 11:22?
Okay.
So,
And
and then do
some
we
of
need
us,
to, do we need to do anything?
peel off at 11:30. I've got a phone meeting that I have not been able to push at 11:30, so I will not be joining.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Babbitt.
So do
Everyone
we
else?
do anything on
okay?
our little computers?
No, we remain the same.
Okay.
Okay, so, yes, Scott?
Yeah, just real quick, Sam Kaufman, I think, is waiting to join for the executive session. So if you'll let him in, and then you can let him know that we've got a couple minutes, we'll start at 11:22.
Yeah. Okay, will you take care of that, Rhonda?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, I'm
thank you.
taking care of it. We'll go on 5 minutes.
Okay.